Welcome to the very first episode of WeAreBoard podcast. In this worldwide premiere, we will take you on a trip down memory lane and chat about how each of us got into this wonderful and sometimes wallet-draining world of board games. Spoiler alert, some very popular games are mentioned. Next, we tackle the backlog in our off-the-shelf segment, where we finally crack open games that have been gathering dust on our shelf of shame. And trust me, there's a lot. Did they live up to the hype, or were they destined to just be sealed and maybe forgotten about? We also debut our Spotlight of the Week segment, where we, the host, choose one topic, be it board games, video games, anything really related to just having fun, and decide to shine some light on it. So you better stay on your edge of your seat for this one because it's going to get very spicy. And finally, we crank up that BG hype train to share what's got us all buzzing in the board gaming world. From new releases to upcoming Kickstarters and GameFound, we've got you covered. So hold on tight, get ready to write down some board game recommendations because we can never have enough, and join us for a fun chat about board games. We are your host. My name is Tona, and I've been gaming for about 15 years now. Come to know and love board games. My collection has grown to up to almost 700 board games now. I have that dedicated space in my house, and those Kickstarters keep flowing. The board games keep coming in. I'm trying to push some out, but to this day, I still love board gaming. It's almost become a lifestyle, right? One thing that I'm really into, I've gotten really into the Euros. I feel like it's almost like a progression. You go from your casual to your social deduction to your party games, and then, kind of start hitting the Euros. One of my favorite designers is Vital Lacerda. I really like playing a game, coming out of it with my brain being completely turned into mush. Being able to find the logic behind those board games. I think that's one of my favorite things about them, and people have gotten so creative with the way they design the board games. It's just something I really love. So I my main thing is Euros, but I'm always down to play your next dexterity game.
My name is Victor. I've been gaming for 10 years. Started like towards the end of college, right? Always loved board games like Life and, even just Chutes and Ladders as a kid. But like I played those when I was like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And I just had like fond memories playing with my mom and my sister. But I was just like, those are just kind of like, kind of kid games. And it's actually shocking. It was shocking to me when I went back and like would play Life as an adult, because I remember thinking like, man, it was such a fun game. It just really felt like, I was having this life and having kids and you can get married. And then I played it as an adult and I was just like, oh my God, 8-year-old brains or 7-year-old brains, just they're very different. But yeah, towards the end of college, I had some friends introduce me to board games and I was just like, man, they make board games for adults? And it just set me off on a path. Met, Tona and Aaron, found out they were playing board games, and we were like, well, I mean, we gotta link up, you know what I'm saying? Started for a while, I think, where I was kind of going to Dallas like regularly, and like just the three of us hanging out for a weekend playing board games. But yeah, so similar to Tona, started getting like more complicated board games and like, got heavy into like Euros and things like that, which are probably still like generally my favorite. I think I'm also really starting to appreciate like a really good, simple party game that like gets like everyone involved, especially when you're hanging out with people who aren't heavy board gamers. And then also like really thematic board games, like a board game that's still like a really good, maybe like a Euro game, but the theme like makes a ton of sense and you actually feel like a little bit like immersed in the theme, right? Almost like role playing, right? Without having to actually, do all that all that extra stuff. But yeah, just kind of going through the ups and downs, get more into complicated games, get more into simple games, get back more into complicated games. But hey, board games, they got everything, whatever you need.
I'm Aaron. I used to play games like, the big boys, Monopoly, Life. And like growing up, I was kind of just like, board games like last like a really long time. Like you start at 8, don't finish until 2. And I was like, I'm a child. I have very low attention span, so I'm just gonna keep playing Pokemon. And so like board games kind of pushed me into playing video games because video games have like that satisfaction, like that instant gratification. And so I really didn't pick board games back up until I went to college. So I was doing heavy video gaming, got invited to do like some board games, and I was like, what is this, like Monopoly? They're like, nah, it's this game called Settlers of Catan. And I was like, all right, that's fine, whatever. And so we started playing Settlers of Catan, and like I was like mind blown because I was like, wow, like this is like a pretty complex board. Like, ooh, like these are kind of a lot of rules. Like my eyes are starting to glaze over. But like I started like once I started getting into it, I was like, oh, okay, like this isn't too bad. Like it's better than Monopoly, and like it seems to have like a definite end. Like this doesn't seem like it's going on forever. However, I ended up like there was like a great wood famine. Everybody needed wood for some reason, and I got like I drew a card that was the Monopoly card where it was just like you just get everybody's like one resource from everybody. And I was like, well, I guess I'll take wood since everybody wants wood. And then everybody got up and left, and I was like, ooh, this doesn't feel good. So I just like stopped playing board games until I left college, and then a mutual friend brought me around Tona, and so me and this mutual friend in Tona started playing games at like this Indian food place, like this Indian food restaurant. And like we would be nudging, like nomming on some naan and playing games like the game, where it was like the super simple card game. But I was just like, man, I don't know what this dopamine's doing to me, but it's hitting. And so I kept hanging out with Tona. That he became my Mr. Miyagi, and then like that set me off on one of those kicks where it's like, oh, Tona introduced the game to me. I'm gonna go buy it, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna buy another one. I'm gonna buy another one. And then I started bringing it around like other groups of friends, and like it really started kickstarting that love of games from there. So now that I'm like more mature in my board game, I guess hobbyage, I love some good old stonk games, some good stock games. Love me a good negotiation game. The art of the deal is something I'm really, really into. I love asymmetric games. I love when everybody has different things that they're trying to do. I feel like it's almost like a board games equivalency of video games where everybody has like something completely different, but it all leads to the same thing. We have shared actions, but like we have like souped up, powerful, like more action, so everybody's balanced but broken at the same time. And of course, love me a good area control game. So you got your Innises, your Dwellings of Eldervale, like all that kind of stuff where you kind of just like spread out, hodl some land, and yeah, just show your dominance on the board.
Off the shelf. Get those board games off the shelf of shame and let's get them to the table. The shelf of shame haunts all of us. They just stare at us in shrink wrap. Every time we look at it, we're like, oh, we're going to get to play that, I'm sure, sometime this week. Well, it's been a couple years, still in shrink wrap, so off the shelf is here. We're able to talk about the games that finally are able to get on the table and be played.
Yeah, dude. Actually, I got for Christmas. So I got the Imperium card games. So I bought two by myself. We have a friendly local board game store that was selling Imperium Horizons and Imperium Classics, and I got Imperium Legends for Christmas. So the first game that was off the shelf post Christmas was Imperium Horizons from Osprey Games. So this is a 1 to 4 player card drafting Civ game where you take the Helm of a Nation and are tasked with like bringing them back to glory. So I always say it's kind of like Civ, the card game, and I'm not necessarily a huge fan of civilization games because it normally ends up being I need to do this in order to do this in order to do this versus I need to like discover glass blowing in order to advance my pottery in order to do all that kind of stuff. And I feel like this game has a good combination of that. So the game revolves around playing cards that help you build an engine to help you acquire resources or even more cards. And the game ends when one player either builds the last of their like special development cards or they activate like this other special glory card. And so there's 4 different types of cards you can get. So you can get like either technology cards, you can get land cards, mercenary cards, and I think like just basic like resource generating cards, so like the potteries and all that kind of stuff. And it's actually a really cool mechanic because like anytime you gain a card, it's essentially like boomers being very upset with progress. Like you get an additional unrest card. So unrest cards serve two purposes. Not only do they junk up your deck, but if you run out of unrest cards in like the special pile, the game ends and whoever has the least amount of unrest cards just wins like automatically. And so I thought that was a really cool way to kind of show like how civilizations are like really, really abject to change. But if like you get a land card, it's like manifest destiny. Everybody likes land. So we played with three players. I think a lot. So if you look on BGG, Imperium Horizons and all the Imperium games gets a little bit of a bad rep because they're like, well, it's a really good solo game or a solitary game because it kind of takes a while. But I always tell people Imperium Horizons and like the whole Osprey Classic series is more like a board game where it's a slow burner. You actually have to do things to set up your turn and like execute on what you've set up in order to have like a good payoff versus a deck builder where it's just like turn and burn, gotta reshuffle, gotta, like build up the deck in order to just like literally buy points like a Dominion or a Star Realm. So I thought it was actually, I mean, I like long games. I like slow burn games, and I like to like actually dictate the strategy. Plus, you have like I want to say 24 different civs to pick from. You can be cultists, you can be like Arthurians. Everybody has like their own specific deck and like their own specific path to victory. I think it's an amazing game.
I own Imperium Legends and Imperium Classics. That sadly still sits on my shelf of shame. But I did do one of the tricks in BGG, which is basically you're able to combine both into just one box. Save that shelf of shame space, and from what I gathered from that, just kind of getting it all together, putting it together into the box, it really ends up being just cards. Does Horizon add more components than that?
Yeah, they add more cards. Like it's literally just cards and like resources. So all three of my games sit in the Horizons box, which is like a little bit bigger than both the Legends and the Classics, but I have it organized. I mean, I took out the inserts because I mean, you know me, if I know I'm not reselling a game and this game is not going to be for sale at any point in my life, I just take out the inserts and optimize it to the best of it, like the best of my abilities. But I have it all bagged. I don't have all the cards individually sleeved because there's like literally 1,000 cards, and I just don't have the time or patience to sleeve all of them. But I do have it organized where it's like you can, if anybody wants to play, it's easy to pick a nation. It's easy to create like the little startup decks. It's easy to create the pool, and it's easy to play.
So, I guess like the one question I have is, weight being quote unquote how complex BGG thinks a game is, right? It's a card game, kind of like based off of your description. Obviously, it is very involved, but the thing I found very surprising was that it's a 3.96 weight out of 5.
Yeah, with just cards?
Yeah, with just cards, which is, in my opinion, extremely heavy for just a card game, really. So can you like speak a little to that?
What's on these cards, man?
The only reason why it's at 3.96 is because there are clans that have specific powers that play direct, like completely different from what the base rules tell you. So, like in Dominion and in any other like regular deck builder, you all have the same actions and you all have like the same pool of cards. So it's just like, how do you play with letters A through G? Like, how many words can you make with that? With this one, you get the whole alphabet. And some cards use A, B, C, M, and N. Other cards use literally just X. And so the complexity of jumping into a new card game and every single card is different. And then you have like a common pool of cards and you don't know what those are either. I can see where there's a little bit of, like weight in the fact that you have to read everything, process everything, and plan based on stuff that you're just learning. But after like two or three plays, I feel like the weight plummets because once you kind of get the general gist of what you kind of need to do, you can just find cards or look for cards that build around that engine.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, just for it being a card game, right? I mean, yeah, it has some other components, but the meat of the game is in those cards. I was very impressed that that was the complexity. And it has a great quote unquote community rating. Take that, leave it however you want to read that, but the complexity is really what interests me because just coming from a card game, it's very interesting that it's so high.
Yeah. I would say it's like accurate for somebody who is used to just traditional deck builders. And the simple fact that it's harder than most deck builders, I will say. But if you look at it through the lens of a board game, that probably drops the points to like maybe a two, because like after you just read stuff, now you just have to figure out, how do I put this stuff together. Like it's not like you have like 20 different actions and they're all dependent on something else. Like all the cards, especially like your starter deck, play into what you're trying to do. And legitimately it's one of those things where it's like, I wonder, you know, can I, summon this next card? And it's just like you just have to wait for your deck, because all of the decks play intrinsically into each other. The first time I played with the homies, one of my buddies, name's Crossover 757, he picked like one of the hardest civilizations. And after like 15 minutes, he pretty much like got the gist of it. And all he was doing was just like learning new cards and like learning kind of how the cards played along with each other. So
Yeah, yeah, and I guess one thing that I do want to mention, at least about legends and classics, maybe not the horizons that you have, is but it's all, I think, the same. The designer, the art for the games, I think it's really unique, and I don't know, I really like the art for it.
yeah, I do too. I think it's beautiful. And I think it actually also has like really good table presence. And like they really took their time in like making a lot of these cards different. So it's actually cool because like if you have like these cultists, you play a completely different game because you're literally trying to start a ritual and the game ends when you summon like Cthulhu and like the game's just over and you win. Other ones you have like there's like the court of the Arthurians, and it's literally just a telling of the Camelot stories, and all you're doing is doing quests. Like you're not even worried about what's on the board. All you're doing is stealing people's cards and like completing quests with them. So it's just one of those asymmetric games where you just have to like the replayability is so steep because each individual clan, like granted, like there's a somewhat symmetrical way to victory, but like how you get there and like how each clan has really good strengths. Like some people have higher, draw rates, other people have higher deck limits. Like it's just it's really cool.
So it's not just straight historical. It's got like some fantasy elements
Yeah, baby. It's got it all.
and asymmetric. I always like a little asymmetric.
Yeah. So for me, again, I probably have the largest collection and the shelf of shame. So, ironically, the game that got off my shelf this past week was Unconscious Mind. It has quite a lot of hype behind it currently. I believe it did pretty well at like Gen Con and Origins. I believe the hype train was very, very much alive and well for that game. So when we were at BGG Con this past November, it was BGG Con 2024. I saw it. The publisher had brought it. They were selling it. I had to go all in on it. And basically, Unconscious Mind ends up being a game where basically Sigmund Freud, he is wanting to discuss psychology. And
Sigmund Freud, dude? I had no idea.
I know, dude.
That's amazing.
And basically, you play as one of his associates, and they started a group called the Wednesday Psychological Society. And basically, every Wednesday, these psychologists would show up at his apartment, and they basically would discuss ideas. At least that's basically the gist of the game, right? So this game actually ended up being, it reminded me kind of a Lacerda game. There's so many different moving parts within this game. There's different phases, starting with the first phase, which is basically stating your idea. So as a psychologist, you would state an idea, and, basically your ideas are going to end up being like your workers. And you can do one or two ideas on your turn, and you're based on the ideas, where you place them on the idea board, you're able to do those actions. But apart from that, you also end up having your own player board, where you kind of have to juggle your ink pod, right? Because you're writing notes, and in your player board within it, you're basically building a little engine that is triggered by that ink pod when it lands. And when that engine triggers, you get different resources, which, in this game, they call them insights. So you're basically learning insights on your patients that you can cure. Now, on top of it all, you are able to also have an office. And in this office, you're actually treating patients. And kind of like the game Canvas, where it has overlays of like pictures, this game also has overlays that you can put on top of these patients that basically it's called grief. And, it's all random. So high replayability on this game because everything is so random. But basically, you're trying to treat different patients based on the insights that they need. And so, you're kind of having to juggle those two different parts. But on top of it all, you're also having to write papers, based on volumes that are written. You have to do all these different things, follow around Sigmund Freud, trying to be able to use the different tag associations within each location in order to be able to get, these different reputation points. What I really liked about it too is that the end game happens when people decide they want the end game to happen. So basically, anytime you get reputation, Sigmund Freud's reputation also goes up. And so he is basically the leader of the group, right? So once Sigmund Freud crosses the threshold, I believe it's 10 points, it might be 7, but once he crosses that threshold, the game ends. And so, it can go as slow as the group wants it, or, if someone's trying to rush the win, they could basically try and publish and get points in order to push the reputation all the way up and end the game. I got to play it. Beautiful components. I actually got all the expansions for it too, but we just played the base game just to kind of get a feel for it. But yeah, extremely cool to be able to have all those different moving parts. There's different dreams that you have to be able to interpret in the game's way and be able to figure them out in order to cure your patients. And again, all of that is also randomized. So it's just beautiful artwork. And again, it's so many little moving parts.
Dude, this is so crazy. I thought it was about like you're in someone's mind or something like that. I think I'm mixing it up with that one game about a coma.
Was that Sleeping Gods?
No, there's a different one where you're like in someone's mind who's having a coma. I can't believe this is like you're Freud's homies.
Yeah.
And you're all meeting up with Freud like on the weekly and being like, yo, Freud, check this out. I had this dream. And that's kind of like your points is like your points kind of like how much Freud respects you.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of ends up turning that way. And, like it can be a little cutthroat too, because, you can publish these pieces, right? You publish them, but then other homies, AKA associate psychologists, they can then grab the volumes that you use for what you publish so you can publish your own stuff with that.
Oh no.
So
dude.
because you're technically sharing knowledge.
Them boys plagiarizing.
But you have to pay certain resources to the person who originally published it in order to be able to get that type of knowledge.
So does it feel kind of like, like the favorite where you're kind of like jockeying for better position and you're just kind of like being petty with one another?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And in like there are different, with the ideas that you're stating, there are different methods to even move Sigmund Freud in the map. So you could essentially be like, oh, I know that Victor is going to go to the opera this next turn. So I'm going to move the homie Sigmund actually to the courtroom, which is like very far from him. So like, it's like, there's a lot of there's a lot of different things you can do in order to make that happen. So it was a really, really fun game. I'm looking forward to playing it with the expansions because they introduce pets that you can have for the patients and stuff. So
Emotional support animals.
Mm-hmm.
Or is there any part of the game where like, do your theories have to be accurate? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there are requirements when you publish. Basically, they have to follow. There's tags in the game that basically will be like green, purple, red, and they kind of associate to the different locations in the city. But they have to meet those color requirements in those volumes in order for you to be able to publish. So if you don't have those colors, then you're unable to publish. So yeah, there are requirements.
You can't be a total quack. That's
No,
pretty
no, no. What about you, Vic? What's your off the shelf?
Off the shelf. Well, so the most recent game I played, we've kind of had it for so long. So it's called Cockroach Poker. It's definitely been around for a while. I had heard about this game, and I bought it for my brother for Christmas, like 2019 or something. So a long time ago. And then, we played it. It was fun. But like I could only play it like when I was in Dallas seeing him. So I just went a long time without like ever playing it again. And I'd always think about it. So then I bought myself a copy. And then we didn't really play it for like 6 months. But finally we've been playing it a lot recently. And then it's actually been like requested a couple times. So the people are loving it right now. But yeah, so Cockroach Poker, it's like I think it's published in Germany. It's a little tricky to find sometimes in the US, to be honest. I think I found a copy at my local board game store, called Tanuki here in Austin. They had a copy sitting around. But yeah, sometimes you just gotta look on Amazon and find someone who's, charging like $50 for shipping, and that's your only bet. But the thing about this game is super light, super easy. But it's kind of about lying and bluffing, right? So all you're doing is handing cards to each other, and you're telling them what the card is. So there's 8 different kinds of bugs, right? So when you hand a card, you have to say what kind of bug it is, right? So it could be a cockroach, a stink bug, a fly, a scorpion, whatever. If the person you're handing the card to can tell that you're telling the truth or that you're lying, they can call it. They can say, that's the truth, or that's a lie, and flip it. And if they're right, then you hold on to the card kind of as a negative point. If you ever get 4 of the same card, you lose the game, everyone else wins. So like, you can't just tell the truth, but you can't just always lie. And so like, I think what happens with a lot of lying games is people just kind of like, they try to be quiet, try to be chill, like not lie, and just try to like survive. But like in this game, it's like there's no option. There's no easy option to like just kind of, move along, because you have to lie or you have to tell the truth, and you have to be unpredictable.
Oh man, that sounds ruthless.
Yeah, it just gets really, really goofy, and we've been playing it a ton. And yeah, if y'all can find a copy.
Would you categorize it as a party game?
Oh yeah. It's like super light, like 20 minutes. And then, after like 20 minutes, one person loses and then everyone else wins. People feel good, and then they're usually like running back.
Oh, it's that type of game. Nice.
Yeah, it's gas, dude. It was also one of those games where last year we had a few people meet up just to have like a weekend of games, and like it was almost like a summit for like non-gamers and gamers alike. So we had like the plethora of options to pick from, but people went crazy for Cockroach Poker because it's one of those games where it's like it'll go for a long time because, like Victor said, people are afraid to lie. But I mean, I just spice it up, and it's like all I'm doing is lying. And I'm just gonna have to like force people to get out of their comfort zone. And like once people start getting out of their comfort zone, and it was like the small like super mousy girl passed me and she was like, Aaron, I think this is a cockroach. I picked it up. I couldn't be more proud that it was a stink bug. I was just like, oh, now we're going. So yeah, it's really I know people don't necessarily like if people are afraid of like the lying games, like the chameleon or anything where it's like you're forced to be a liar and like kind of have to blend in. This one, like you obviously have the choice to lie, but like you can also tell the truth like if you really, really want to and still have a pretty good time.
WAB Thoughts, the main topic of the episode. So for, everyone wants to know, how did we get into board games? What really, just kind of made that cog in your brain start turning and, get you into that board game, I'll go ahead and start. And to be honest, for me, it ended up being Munchkin, believe it or not.
Say it ain't so.
That boy a munch.
Well,
Hey,
hey, look,
Munch.
listen, this is, Munchkin's a franchise. You got a billion different kinds of Munchkin, and, I can respect the hustle for Munchkin. For me personally, maybe I don't play it anymore. But that was kind of my intro to board games, right? I was in college. I basically knew what everyone else knows. That's not really into the hobby. Your monopolies, your live, not nothing really that I just thought it was something I would find, kind of in the corner of an Airbnb room that I would never touch, right? Jenga would be in there, or stuff like that. So when when my friends brought over a copy of Munchkin, and they were like, "Well, we got to try it. We gotta see what it's all about." We took out the cards, we took out the dice, and literally, to this day, I remember just rolling dice and looking at my cards, being able like, "Oh, okay, I get a level for this card that tells me I get a level," and believe it or not, it just made me kind of realize that there are different kinds of mechanics out there other than just oh, roll dice and just move that many times the dice says, right? So Munchkin ended up being that game that really introduced me to the hobby. Now to this day, I won't play it. It's just constant king making, and it just really drives me crazy that it's just basically all just pulling the top card and seeing what happens. And yeah, I think even Aaron and I think we've tried, turning it into a drinking game at one point, trying to
Oh.
trying to just make it a little more lively. But yeah, I mean, it just ended up, just kind of falling flat now. But I will say I am thankful for Munchkin because it was able to kind of open up my eyes into the board gaming scene.
Right. And there actually is a drinking game based on Munchkin called Drunk Quest, where it
Oh, true.
literally is just Munchkin, except like there's cards that make people automatically drink, and like the monsters in the middle, you just add drinks to, and you have to take that many drinks to beat the monster. I feel like that is the end all be all to Munchkin in like its purest form, because in like regular Munchkin, just like you said with like the king making, that's defeated because it's just like, well, you could be a king, but you're gonna be like 16 beers deep.
uh, Oh man, and we've definitely played Drunk Quest a few times. That yeah, I feel that. But again, like I said, you got to respect the grind from Munchkin because to this day, there's a million different themes for that game. And I know that there's serious board gamers out there who have every single copy of it. So I guess they must change the way they play based on the theme. I would hope so, but for me, I think just the one copy that I had that I think I ended up giving away at some point was enough for me, for Munchkin anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it probably had a positive impact just on board gaming, you know. So can't really knock it too much just for kind of like exploding stuff. Which I didn't know Drunk Quest was basically Munchkin in drinking form. The last time I think I played Drunk Quest, well, the last time in college, we were so fucking drunk we couldn't finish the game, and my roommate was like making out with a stranger an hour later. Shit gets wild.
Yeah, that sounds outside of the making out. That sounds like a regular game of Drunk Quest. And like the crazy thing is, there's cards that you can like equip on yourself. That it's like if you take these drinks, you can do this special thing, and you can do it like as many times as you want. So we were playing with the last time we played, I think was like 5 years ago. We played with somebody who thought he was like slick, and he was like drinking liquor, like a mixed drink with liquor, and he was just like, "Oh, well, if I drink 5 drinks, then I'll get like 3 cards. I don't have any cards." So boy had 30 cars, but like was asleep in 5 minutes because like I guess all the tequila sodas caught up to him. And we are just
Jesus.
like, I mean, I guess that's one way to eliminate yourself.
What about you, Vic? What got you into the hobby?
Well, there were definitely like a bunch of games kind of leading up to it. I think we played some Settlers of Catan, and that was like cool, but it wasn't um, like enough to change the course of my life or anything. But then we started playing games like lying social deduction games, which was like, oh shit, like this like lying to your friends in a board game. It was just like, it's almost like role playing a little bit, but like, before just had never played anything like this, right? From just playing like Halo single player or like, multiplayer shooter games, to have a game where I'm like lying to my friends, right? Was very cool. But then I played Seven Wonders and I was like, oh my God, dude, like strategy and shit. And so I just like, board games now, like we're almost used to having new mechanics in board games all the time. But, for me at the time, it was just like, I don't know, board games, you just kind of like roll dice and you like get resources and spend them, right? But then having a game where we're like drafting cards, to me, that kind of like blew my mind. I was like, oh shit, like board games really have so many like mechanics and crazy stuff going on. I mean, Seven Wonders now, I think like, it's like a very like classic game, and it's still very fun to play. But it's not like some groundbreaking experimental game. But for me at the time, I was like, oh my God, like board games have so many possibilities. Like this is just so radically different than something I would have expected from a board game. We're like drafting cards. We're like kind of like building our civilization, quote unquote. You interact with players only to your left or right, like as far as trading, as far as like battling. And then like you can pay money to players like next to you for resources, so that it just introduced so many things that I never thought were like done in board games. Like I just thought these kinds of things would be like only in video games or something like that. So that was the first one where I was just like, oh shit, like how deep does this go?
Oh, definitely. To this day, I'll go ahead and say it. Like I don't really play Seven Wonders, but Seven Wonders Duel, I can't get enough of, dude. Like that, yeah. The way that you stack the different civilization cards, and you're still able to build your wonders. I think it's kind of rare to like find really good 2-player games. Seven Wonders Duel is definitely up there as like goated, because it just the way, the replayability of it, the way the cards come out every time, the different ways you can win, even military, science, or just straight victory points. Yeah, definitely. Definitely a great game to get you into the board gaming scene, because again, to this day, I mean, I'm playing a ton of Seven Wonders Duel, so it's a great game.
Agreed. And I think it's just one of those good foundational games where, when anytime you think of like, hey, I want to introduce like this mechanic to somebody. So like card drafting, when you think of a card drafting game, even if it's Terraforming Mars, even if it's a Wonderful World, like games that have been created later, you always say like, oh, it's kind of like Seven Wonders. You know what I mean? Like Seven Wonders is always the source material that you help teach people and help encourage people to play future card drafting games. So it's definitely one of those like solidified in the foundation of board game annals of just like really, really good foundational, good starter game.
Yeah, yeah, and kind of like what you were like mentioning, Aaron. It carry over those resources throughout. Kind of start building like an engine. Yeah, there's a lot of like intro into mechanics in that game that you don't realize until you start playing other games, and you're like, hey, I've seen this in Seven Wonders. So yeah, that's definitely a great game to start off with, Victor. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, and a little plug for your friendly local gaming store. So the reason we got that game was because I think it was my birthday was coming up, and I told my girlfriend like, oh, we're kind of playing like board games, blah blah blah. So she went to a board game store in Austin, and like obviously didn't know what games to get me because she wasn't a gamer either. And she just asked the guy. She was like, what should I get my boyfriend? He's starting to get into board games, and he was like, what games does he like? And he was like, she was like, he's played Settlers of Catan, like Social Deduction, and then he's the one that suggested Seven Wonders, and that fucking like blew up for us. So yeah, head down to your local gaming store, talk to the guy at the front, get his recommendations.
History was written that day. What about you, Aaron? What got you into it?
So after I was done playing games with Tona, like I kind of had a little moxie about me, like maybe like 3 or 4 months later, and I was like branching out to spread the Tona works, like the Tona works to the people. Any game I played with Tona, I would end up buying. The bought games would end up going to board game hangouts, and then like just spreading like wildfire. And so we're basically like in this like underground board game ring, like getting our badges, getting our stats up. And so a buddy of mine takes me to another one of his friends' house who like actually also has like it's a small collection, but like it's a different collection. So this person actually had Seven Wonders. They had a version of Munchkin. They had Flux. And I was like, oh my goodness, like all these are games that I've seen in board game stores, but I never got a chance to play. But what set it off was a game called Coup. So Coup is a 2 to 6 player hidden roll deduction game from Indie Board and Cards, where you're basically repping your own like little clan and like political party, and you need to be like the last person alive with at least like 1 or 2 cards in front of you. So the 2 cards in front of you are called like influence, and each player starts the game with like 2 monies, 2 influence cards, and you have the option to like the game goes by you just doing like these basic actions. So like the basic actions are you get a dollar from the bank. That's called like your income phase. You can get 2 coins from the bank. That's called like your foreign aid phase. Or you could spend $7 and like assassinate somebody's like face down card. So you basically take them down to like half HP. And if they get assassinated again, like they're out of the game. So the crazy thing about it was he like explained the game, and I was just like, okay, so I guess it's like a race, and like you can use your cards to, I guess, like get more stuff. And he was just like, yeah, it's kind of right, but there's like 5 different powers that these cards have, and they're like basically souped up versions of the regular actions. And all you have to do is just claim that you're one of the people. So one of the people I had was like the Duke. So remember I said you could take a dollar or take $2. So the Duke gets to take $3 and then blocks everybody from taking $2.
That
And
Duke
I was
money.
just like, bruh, that's crazy. And so we're all, claiming to be the Duke. But then he was just like, well, somebody's lying because there's 5 of us and there's only 3 Dukes in the game. And I'm just like you can only do the Duke action if you have the Duke, right? He was like, well, how's anybody gonna know if your card's face down? And my brain fell out of my ear. I was like, bruh, are you telling me that people come to game night and play this game and lie? He was like, yes. Yes, it's all lying. And I was like, bruh. So Coup just broke my brain open because there's just so much depth into not only card counting, but it's also just like you just have to make like good judgment calls where it's just like if 5 people, like once again, like if 5 people called out Duke, everybody got like all these buku bucks, and you're just like, okay, well somebody's lying. And it's also fun when you have like 2 of the same cards, somebody claims it, and you're just like, well, there's a 66% chance that you're wrong. So you call them out. If they're right and they actually have the same, but they have the person, you lose one of your lives. And then they get a new card. But if you, obviously call them, they flip over one of their cards and you basically tell them to eat shit. It is such a good game because it's one of those games where it's like, it's lying plus. Because, like, yes, you can lie, but it's also just like, are you lying about your lying? Like, and that's like the truth. And oh, my goodness. Coup just broke my game, like broke my back open with just the possibilities of what like games could be.
That's one of the first games that I also played. Part of a group of them. But yeah, Cuba has definitely a fond place in my heart to this day. Even it's just kind of like you said, where every single person in that game has a different ability, but the fact that you can be any of those people because no one knows, it really adds so much to that game. That is such a fun game.
And it's like the more you play, the more you just understand the meta because like you have an assassin who can, like assassinate people for 3 coins, and you have somebody who blocks assassins. And so it's just like, hey, I assassinate you with the assassin, and they have the choice either say you're not an assassin or they say like, hey, well, I'm actually, the person who blocks assassins. And now you have to call them because if they're not the person who blocks assassin, it's like a one-hit kill, or you can back off and just be like, oh, well, I do have an assassin. I'm just going to send my 3 coins and you just blocked it. Oh, no. And then, like, somebody tries to assassinate you. Now you can claim that you have the assassin blocker. You actually do have the assassin blocker because you're lying about the assassin. Like, just the depth of just knowing the six cards and just like being able to count the cards and play that game over and over and over and over again. Oh my goodness, it's just so good.
Oh my god. Yeah, dude, that game took over like wildfire in my group when we first started playing that. And like you said, it's like foundational because like to this day in any board game where like you take income or something or money of some sort, like we're all of us were always like, I'm taking my Duke money. I'm taking my Duke money.
Hmm. Yes.
And
Dude,
like,
it's just something about the Duke where it's like it's not
so
going to
good.
get you in trouble, but it's also just like it's a big D move. It's a big Duke move.
It's like who's gonna call that out? You're just getting like one or two additional coins, but like it's also so important. And it's one of those games too where like lying is, it's beneficial, but it's almost like completely necessary because if people know exactly what you are, then they know exactly how to play you and like how to stop you. So like if you don't start off lying like kind of early, to kind of establish this like false base so that later when you tell the truth, no one can tell. People will just kind of like suss you out and be like, okay, he's the dude that blocks this thing, so I just do this, and like he's screwed. There's nothing he can do. And if he tries to lie, I already know.
And something underrated about Coop, it can fit in your pocket. Like
Yeah.
it can go anywhere you go. You know what I mean? Like that's literally a game that you could fit in your pocket, go wherever you need to go, take it out of a bar, boom, easy peasy. It's a very good game and has very easy to take anywhere, and it's so much fun.
And it's quick. Like it's one of those games where I would say it doesn't last as long as Werewolf and like One Night Ultimate Werewolf. I think it's more fun because it can be played in legit 10 to 15 minutes, even at max player count. Like if people know what they're doing, people are going. Like yeah, you can knock out like maybe 5 or 6 games, and then like as a little appetizer while somebody's either learning a heavier game or setting up another game.
Yeah, yeah. And talking about, games that you can play a lot, replayability. I think there's a couple games that I think we all share, right? That kind of changed us together almost. I think, for me and for us, I guess I'll speak for us that the game that I think we all kind of share a love for is Hanabi, the firework game.
That one literally just came off the shelf too.
Oh, you played it recent, still to this day, huh?
Yeah, we played that New Year's Eve actually because we were like, I mean, we know what's going down tonight. We got to get
Yep.
ready for the fireworks.
So Hanabi, it's the Japanese word for fireworks. Literally, it's a cooperative game. People are trying to basically build the perfect fireworks with these cards or tiles. You got to go always for the tiles, though. You can't be holding the cards. It's very difficult. But basically, you're gonna have these tiles that have different numbers with different colors. They go from 1 to 5. And they repeat, right? So there will be 3 tiles of ones, and then from 2 to 4, there will be 2 tiles of each number. And then for fives, there's only 1 of each, right? And there's different colors for each set of tiles. But basically, it's all random, and you grab 4 tiles. Depending on the number of players, it might change to 1 more. But everyone grabs 4 tiles, but the gist of the game is that the tiles are facing away from you. So you don't know what tiles you actually have. Only your cooperative team members know what tiles you have. And on your turn, you're able to, either play a tile. So basically you're placing down a firework, or you're able to give a clue to one of your team members, or you're able to discard a tile of your choice. The object, again, is to be able to place these fireworks on the same color from 1 to 5 without any repeats, without misnumbering these tiles. And every time you mess up, you kind of cause a little explosion. And I think you get 3 explosions before you're fully out. This game is literally the replayability on it. Just the amount of trying to be able to give clues. I guess one thing with the clues, you have to always give full of information, whether it is the color or the number. So if your team member has 2 3s on tiles, then you have to point out all 2 3s. You can't just point out one tile that is convenient for them to play. So it's basically just a game of trying to remember what tiles are out there, what tiles you have, and trying to play the correct ones when you have to play the correct ones. Speaking for us, and you guys can also speak to it, but I feel like we've played on it so much that we've kind of almost built some sort of meta where we're reading each other's minds and we're basically anticipating turns before we play our own stuff. So it's what a great game.
Dude, it's all meta. Like I always tell people, Hanabi is the game. Like we always ha about like work happy hours, work team building, all that kind of stuff. This is one of those games where I'm just like, this is actually something where you get to know either your friends or somebody just based on how they think and like how quickly they can adapt to the information that they're given, their memory, how they organize that, how they give clues, like how they work together with everybody else at the table. I think that this is one of those 10 out of 10 games that like I would never shy away from bringing around any group of people regardless of if they're never played board games or like the most seasoned board games. This game is legit for everybody.
Yeah, dude, it's so good. And like the replayability is so good too within the same group, because like you'll play once with a group and then you'll kind of like get a feel for each other, you know? And then you start being like, he's giving me this clue because I know he thinks I'm going to think this. So I know I have to do this. So yeah, it just gets so crazy. You just get like so many like mind games going. And it's so satisfying when someone like picks up what you're putting down. And you're just like, yeah, baby. And I think another hilarious thing too is that once you give someone a clue, you can't ever remind them what you told them. So if you tell them, hey, this one right here is a 1. Later on, by the time it gets back around to their turn, they forget. The only thing you can ask them is, what do you know? And then they can say what they think they know. So they could be like, oh, you told me this one was red. You have to say yes. Like you can't say anything else. You're just like, yep, that's what I said. And or if they say, you didn't give me a clue, you have to say, yep, I didn't give you a clue.
And I will say that it being a cooperative game, I feel like I definitely don't get to play a lot of those anymore these days, but it is just like such a great cooperative game because you're all relying on basically all this information that's out there, just maybe not out there to you. And so the fact that it comes down to, okay, well, I'm fully trusting these people I'm playing with to be able to give me these clues. And of course, if they're new, obviously it's gonna crumble, but it's just such a good game. And one thing that Aaron and I have always said when we're playing that game is we're only gonna let you discard what you need to discard. So and we live by that.
And it's also one of those games that I love that a big gripe I have with cooperative games is so like you have your pandemics and all that, and it's just like or Arkham horrors. It's one of those things where you all table talk and like you can pretty much like figure out the most optimal moves for the game, and it's not too hard. But with Hanabi, there's only so much you can do because it's like you have 3 brains, but like one brain has no idea what anybody is talking about. And one brain doesn't necessarily decipher information given how the other two will. So, like, if y'all tell me, hey, these 3 are 3s, play this 2 because it's the only thing we haven't told you about. And like it's pretty obvious. It's just like, oh, well, this must be like a 5, or oh, I should discard this, or something like that. Like it is so like that randomness that I feel like a lot of co-op games need just to like shake things up so you can't over optimize it. Like that's what it has.
you know, Along that same stem, social deduction I feel like kind of played a fairly big deal with all of us. It's kind of like
Huge.
baby's first steps into board gaming. You go from your Catans, your Munchkins, your Seven Wonders. It kind of almost seems like a stepping stone, right? Your social deduction, and like for me, and I guess for all of us, really, it was the Resistance Avalon. we're all really familiar with that game. You know, it was designed by Don Eskridge. You know, it's basically it's the Resistance, but with new characters. Marilyn, Arthur, they all have different powers now. But basically, the game is, you know, we're all going on these different missions with the people you're playing with. But there's two different traders usually. It changes depending on the number of players as well, which is kind of cool for this game because it can go up to 10 players, which is pretty bananas. But basically, you're sending people on missions, right? And you want to be able to succeed these missions, the good guys anyways. But the traders, they want to fail the missions. And of course, it's basically all hidden information. No one knows who anyone else is. And so basically the way it works is there will always be a leader. And this leader, it'll rotate around the table depending on the people can vote them down. So they're no longer the leader and the leadership will move on to the next person. So basically there are 5 missions and you have to pass 3 of them, I believe. And so what ends up happening is every mission, the leader will pick people. And based off of those people will vote on being okay with those people going. When, let's say that people are okay with the people going, the people will get 2 chips, yes or no, or red and black, basically saying, or actually they'll give cards, right? Basically it'll say fail or success. If you're a trader, you obviously want to fail the mission. If you're not a trader, you want to succeed it. But that's where the social deduction starts coming into play because perhaps you don't want to give away that you're a trader early on, right? So the game ends up being where you're just trying to figure out who the traders are, who are the good guys, because at the end of the day, you got to succeed these missions. What's so great about it that I remember, it's been a while since I've played it, but what I remember, what I loved about it is having to discuss, right? This whole game, really the meat of the game will come from the discussion between everyone and having to analyze what everyone thinks they know and the stuff and the missions they've gone on and which missions have failed and passed. And it's just a whole lot of talking in order to be able to get through the game. But man, I remember it being just like a constant struggle of good versus bad and being able to try and figure it out.
Dude, it's so intense. Like, I mean, it's so much fun, and it's one of those games that we played a shit ton of, and like we couldn't get enough of it. It was so, because it was like we never played a game like that. I think we started playing Resistance before Coup, so Coup was kind of like a way to get a hit of Resistance, that wasn't so long and intense, and draining kind of, because it's like. It's like social deduction, but it's like heavy on the social where it's like to be honest, sometimes it generated bad feelings on some people. Like they, couldn't not take the game personally. I mean, like most people were fine, but every once in a while there are some people, one of our friends to this day, like refuses to ever play this game again because they just had the worst luck because like they're not a great liar. So, and they somehow always got the traitor. So every game would start and would be like, hey, so are you the traitor? And they'd be like, no. And we'd be like, oh my fucking God, you're the traitor. And he's just like, I gotta want to play this game. So it gets pretty intense. But yeah, it was just like, to me, it was like, I didn't know just a board game could get this spicy. Like we're just sitting around, cards, pieces of cardboard, pieces of paper, and we are just like screaming and pointing at each other. My girlfriend, I pulled that move you were talking about where I was the traitor and I didn't want to give myself away too early. And so the leader happened to put me and my girlfriend on a mission, and it was just 2 of us. And there's only one mission that's just 2 people. And, you just need one failure, and if there's even one failure, then you're like, oh, it's one of these 2 people for sure, right? Like there's like no doubt one of y'all is a traitor, so you're both in question the rest of the game. So I passed. I gave the success rather than a failure to not give myself away. And from then on, like, I was golden. No one doubted me at all till it got down to the final mission. And people started counting, and we're like, well, we know this is the traitor. We know this is the traitor, but there's a third. And we just don't know who it could be. And then they're like, and we know Victor's good. And then my girlfriend looked at me, and she was like, you wouldn't lie to me, would you? I was like, babe, never. And they put me on the mission. Best believe I failed that shit so hard. Oh my god, dude. I was in trouble after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because actually we kind of homebrewed a rule for that, which is basically, hey, you can't play no friend card, you can't play no marriage card, you can't play no relationship card. Once the game starts, all the gloves are off, baby.
I actually never homebrewed that. Like my wife would just be like, Are you lying?" I'm just like, "It's a lying game. I might be, I might not be."
Sometimes people there were definitely times where I got put under suspicion, because I'd be the leader and I'd be like, let's put these 3 people on the mission. And they're just like, someone would call me out, would be like, but we're pretty sure this guy's evil. And I'm like, yeah, I know. We have a mission to burn. I think we can bait them into failing one. And then we get the information, they're removed, we'll just never trust that person again. And then people would be like, oh, well, you must also be the evil guy. Which was true sometimes. Sometimes I would use that logic when I was the traitor. But it was like, yeah, sometimes you need that negative information. Because, the ideal would be if you put 2 evil people on a quest, right? And then both of them, because they can't discuss, both of them have to decide if one of them will fail the mission. Mm-hmm. And the dream was that they would both fail the mission. And then you've got 2 bad guys for the price of 1.
Exactly.
And you're like, y'all are never going on a mission again. You got one fail, but y'all are cut.
Or best case is they say oh, well, I can't fail it. Oh, I can't fail it. 2 bad guys have a pass mission. That's delectable. But I also in the game, maybe I don't know how rare this was, but I was we got down to nut cutting time, on the second to last round. It was one of those things where it's we needed a pass to get to basically game 5, but if we had another loss, we lose. And everybody is just all right, we have to have Aaron go because we know he's certified good. I was like, guys, please don't send me. I am good. I only have bad cards. They're just so you're bad. I was like, for all intents and purposes, yes, I'm bad. I just have really bad cards. And so it keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. And then I end up going on the mission. I was like, guys, it's gonna fail. I only have fail cards. The mission failed, of course, and they're just oh, so you're bad the whole time. I flipped it over, and I was like, I was good. I just had bad cards. Please listen to me.
Oh man, I feel your pain. I experienced that many a times. One last thing about this, people get so intense about it. I had a buddy who would literally bring out a notebook and a pen and literally write down every single person's votes when it came to voting. If and he would literally have the receipts of how everyone voted.
Oh my god.
Dude, resistance play no games, you know what I'm saying? So definitely
brother sweats everywhere.
Definitely if you want to get into social deduction, I mean that's why it was one of the first one that kind of got us all into social deduction to begin with.
You know what's funny? This is actually the first game out of all 5 of these that actually has a board.
Hey, I guess that's
God,
true.
does it? Yeah. I guess Seven Wonders, you each have your own little thing, but there's no central board. It's just the deck.
Yep. Oh man. Hey yo, is that a shining star? Nah, it's just the spotlight of the week.
The spotlight of the week, baby. It's a game we all got a lot of thoughts about. But we'll start off. We'll start off nice. We'll start off, with the description, like we would for just any game. So this game is called Shasn. So this game is actually from India. Um, it's this publisher or like company or collective called like Memesis Culture Lab. If you look them up, they do a couple of things. They do like short films and stuff. They do like ad campaigns, and they do like this board game, and like it's a sequel. Um, so it's a 2 to 5 player game, right? It's probably like 2 to 3 hours, and it's kind of like this political area control game, right? You're playing as candidates who are trying to secure the most votes, right? So you're playing on this board that's full of these like little holes for pegs. And when you can secure a voter that's voting for you, you put them on the board, right, in one of the little pegs. And then as things get covered up, once the board kind of reaches a certain state, the game immediately ends. We count up any voters who are in majorities, and then the player who has the most wins the game, right? So it's like all about like these politics and like getting control of enough areas to trigger the end game and have the most points. So the real spicy thing about this game is in order to get resources to get voters to put on the board, you have to answer a question each turn. And the question is like a yes or no question that's like about a certain political topic based on the deck you're playing. Because you can play different decks. There's like the US modern day deck that's like US politics. There's the UK deck that's kind of themed around Brexit. There's the Indian politics deck. And then there's the Future of Humanity deck, which is like 2040, which is like, in a couple of weeks by now. So I think we've mostly played, I think I've only played with the Future of Humanity deck and the Fall of Rome deck, which kind of seemed like a little bit more like funny to play with. But I am curious to try out the US deck. But so the funny thing is you have like these 4 kinds of tracks you can go, right? You have the idealist track, which is just like make things free and fair for everybody. You have the Supremo track, which is kind of like national security tradition. You have the capitalists, which is just money, money, money. And then you have the showstopper, which is always very hard to figure out in any deck. They're just like all about like the media and like attention. It's kind of strange. But so you'll get a question that's like like the Future Humanity deck. You'll get a question that's like markets are being flooded with 3D printed human flesh. Do you want to make it illegal? Yes or no? And so you can play this game as like, I'm just going to answer the questions honestly with my beliefs, which is totally a fair way to play. Or you can play the game as like, I need to get certain kinds of answers in order to get certain kinds of resources because like, that's what I need to get voters at this time. Right. So you could play it like purely political where you're like, I need the resource for the idealist, which is called trust. I need trust to be able to buy voters this turn because like those are the voters that are available to buy or, influence. So you could like try to answer the question like tactically. But it's yes or no. So one side, if you say yes, will be one of the like 4 tracks. And if you say no, it'll be one of the other 2. So you're trying to figure out like, okay, like who would be for selling the lab-grown, the 3D printed human flesh? Like, I guess the capitalists would probably be for that because they're about money. But you're like, who would be against that? Like, would that be against national security? Would that make things not free or fair? Would that make things like, would that like give me attention if I said no? Like media attention? So you're like trying to figure it out. So I think that's kind of like where it gets like pretty fun when you're trying to, especially that's why it's fun playing with like the Future deck or the Rome deck, where you don't really know like these civilizations too well. So like with the Fall of Rome deck, you know, one of my friends got a question that was like, we are thinking of hosting this festival, but the winds bode ill. Should we hold the festival? And it's just like, what does that mean? He was like, I want to get the capitalist answer, but I don't know what's capitalist from Rome's point of view when the winds bode ill. So it gets pretty funny. So we all played it at BGGCon 2021.
Oh yeah, baby.
I was fact checking these numbers. We saw it at the library just randomly. Just picked it up because the box looked cool. We learned how to play, and we played it. Had a great time. I think we played the Future Humanity deck.
Yeah, we did.
Then Tona was like, hey, so the Kickstarter for this game, you know, was like a year ago or whatever, but they're coming out with a sequel called Azadi. If you back the Kickstarter for Azadi, which has actually closed, but you can late pledge. They've opened it up for late pledges. So me and Tona jumped in on it immediately because we were like, we can't find Shasn anywhere. Like, it wasn't in print at the time. So me and him both jump on backing Azadi. And one of the things you could add on to backing Azadi was to add a copy of Shasn. Because you need Shasn in order to play Azadi. So it was like, if you already have it, just get Azadi. If you don't have it, you can get a copy of Shasn.
So let me ask you this, Vic. So tell me, this game is just incredible. You know, we loved it when we played it. What makes this the spotlight of the week? It's such a good game.
What makes it the spotlight of the week is that me and Tona both late pledged for this game in November 2021 CE. I received this game January 3rd, 2025, as in 4 days ago.
That is a quality Kickstarter promise.
I received it 2 days ago. That's crazy.
About a year ago or a year and a half ago, it almost seemed like the project was dead. Like, there were like very few updates. The only updates they were like, hey guys, so the Indian government is censoring the deck about Indian politics. And they're forcing us to like change the language, and we're refusing, we won't print a game that we don't support or stand behind. And then there would just be like no updates for months. And it was like, have they been like taken out by like the Indian government, or like, has it been shut down? Like, what in the world is going on? And then eventually they were like, all right, we figured out the problems. We're back in production. We're going to send everyone a bill for shipping. And we're like, yes, finally. That's kind of like the final step in the Kickstarter process. When they're ready to go, they calculate shipping. You put in your zip code, and it's like, all right, cool, whatever. Like, $15-$20. It's like no big deal, considering like the game itself is like something you really want. We wait, I think, like another year before we actually get the shipping like receipt or whatever. And then one day we finally get it. One glorious day, here it comes. It's ready to ship. And shipping was like $190 to the US. It was like, to the US? Like, I can understand if you live in a country that's not the greatest country in the world, like America, shipping might be expensive. If you live in the middle of the ocean, shipping's going to cost you a pretty penny. But to Texas? To America? We have $200 shipping?
Bro, and my stuff was on auto pay too, so like I got the ask for forgiveness, not for permission thing, because I was just like, yo, where did this money just go? That's crazy.
It just disappeared. Oh, I think that's what it was. I think you just got a notification that you had been charged like
Yep.
$200.
Yeah.
And then you
Yep.
messaged me and you were like, hey, did you get billed for Shasn? And I was like, no. And then you said you got billed $200. And I was like, well, that just couldn't be. That just doesn't sound reasonable. And then I think a day later, I got the email like, all right, time to pay your $200 shipping.
Bro, so I understand Kickstarters, right? I've backed over 80 of them. They all kind of have that same process, and sometimes they will get delayed. That's part of that love of Kickstarter, where they'll come a year late. Whatever. It's almost like norm for the cost, right? Bro, let me tell you, never once have I been auto charged for like. I think it actually ended up being more like $100 on shipping, by the way, just to be more on point on that. But never have I been auto charged on it, right? And then like I think that the biggest rub of all is like you go to their updates and they're like, yo, I mean, that's just shipping, baby. That's capitalism.
That's just normal. Shipping rates have gone up, and we're like, no one else is charging.
Yeah.
Triple
No, absolutely.
digits.
And they're like, yo, that's just the economy, baby. That's all we can offer. And so I'm just like, what? That's crazy, right? Everyone, of course, is in the same boat where they're like,
Yeah.
I don't want the game anymore. Please, like the shipping is more than the game. I just don't want it anymore.
The Kickstarter comments were just a nuclear wasteland. I felt so bad for the project, creators or whatever, just having to respond to these. Like I don't know if I left any comments. I don't think I did, because it was usually like, I don't know if they're even reading this, but like, it was just nuclear. People were like, can I just cancel? Like, I don't even want my money back. I don't want to pay for the shipping. I'd rather just cancel.
And I think I was part of that nuclear train, because I get auto charged this, right? And I'm like, man, that's bananas, right? That's bonkers. I've never experienced that with the Kickstarter before, right? And obviously this is coming from some mismanaging of funds at some point, right? Because other Kickstarters didn't feel that at all. But then, dude, the cherry on top of all of this, right, is I'm on Insta just, doom scrolling as you usually do. And,
right.
Obviously, Vic, Aaron, we've all kind of clicked all these board game ads because we want our ads to be catered to board games. And lo and behold, what is it that I see? But it's a Shasn ad, right? I click it because I'm like, what is that? They're like, yo, you can order Shasn tomorrow, get it today. Oh, and by the way, you don't even got to pay for shipping.
Yeah, they
So
were just
nuts.
like, hey, Shasn's back in print. Order your copy. And, it's saying like it costs like $60 or whatever the game costs for just like the retail copy itself. So, yeah, so I think you showed us the ad and we click into it expecting like, oh, yeah, I mean, who's going to buy this when they go to check out? And it's a $200 shipping for a $60 board game. And you go to the shipping and it's like, I don't know, it was like $10 or free.
Yeah, it was something dramatically less.
Yeah.
So what I like to say about Shasn Kickstarter is, I like to think that I helped kickstart the shipping of Shasn to America for everyone in America,
So they got like the $200 from all like the Kickstarters like per person. So then, they just have all these extra copies they created from the people that canceled. And then they were just like, I mean, we might as well sell these, right? Which is reasonable. But then they charged those people $10 for shipping for a game that was already shipping.
Yeah. Great game.
Just insane.
Definitely a mishandling of the project itself, I'd say, because that was definitely a long run of waiting for some fairly expensive shipping. So,
another spicy tidbit that happened in between was that maybe like a year ago or so, I think they started getting copies of the base game of Shasn available, and I would get ads for buying Shasn with 24-hour shipping, 1-day delivery, and I was just like, I mean, I'm kind of tempted. I'd been waiting like 2.5 years and like not sure I was ever going to get it. So I click on the link and I'm like, okay, so how do I get Shasn with 1-day shipping? And it was like, you have to be in like these 3 cities in India. And it was like, dude, they're just swimming in copies of Shasn in India.
They can't get rid of them fast enough.
Yeah.
I actually ended up breaking, and I actually found a copy in Facebook Marketplace for $20.
20?
So I ended up just buying that because I was like, I'm never gonna get my Shasn copy. I'm just gonna keep getting auto charged $100 every time.
Every time.
It was being held ransom, dude.
We need to pay for gas for the the boats. The boats are expensive. Got to pay.
That's Shaz. I mean, great game. Just a mishandling of the project rollout for sure.
Yeah, so I finally got to play my copy yesterday, and I fucking won, baby. I was like, I'm not losing my first play of this game. I've paid way too much to lose,
and everyone better like it.
And I feel like that's fitting because we ran back Shasn, and me and Vic at I think it was BGG 23, and me and Vic were like in it because me and Vic like longer games, and we know what comes with Shasn, but the other 3 homies we were playing with, no, that it was glazed look. You just completely tapped out, and I was like,
Yeah.
man, let's just hurry up and end this so these people can go back to being casual.
It can get long with more players. So yeah, we played 3 players, and it was probably a good 2.5 hours. So yeah, with even more players, you have a bigger board. It's gonna get pretty long. But we were mostly just kind of like laughing, having a good time at all the the random questions. One really good one I got was should a firm has offered lab-grown babies to parents to simulate the parenting experience. Should this be legal? And I was trying to go capitalist that game, so I was like, hell yeah, dude. Some of these parents, they don't got time for those 9 months of pregnancy. I need those #parenting TikTok, #stay-at-home mom videos.
Hell yeah.
I need to put those on my feed. I don't have time to have a whole ass baby.
True.
Let me just get a little rental.
Choo choo. It's that BG hype train. Gotta back another one.
Yeah, babies. So we got a lot of good BG hype coming from you. So we sourced this news from, these are kind of games that are either going to be coming out through Kickstarter, GameFound, or any other crowdsourced gaming platforms. So the first one, we got a new Dune release coming sometime in 2025. So this will be the ultimate collector's edition of Dune with luxury components to make the table the pride of Arcanon. Contains brand new content with new forces joining for the Battle of the Spice. So for those of you who have seen the Dune Imperiums, all of that, all of these Dune board games derived from an original Dune. I think it was in the 1990s this game was
70s.
created, and then
Older, 80s,
it wrote,
70s maybe.
Yeah.
oh, in the 80s.
Yeah, it was the 70s.
Oh
I
yeah,
think.
so it's a game that was created in the 1980s. You basically take the role of one of the factions in Dune, and this game was super cool because not only have we played it at one of the WAB cons, but all of the factions interact with one another. So you can have, Paul Atreides, he'll have information that he needs to sell to all the houses. You have the Dune people, I forget what the Sand people
Fremen.
are, but you have the same
Fremen.
people who, anytime there's a storm, anytime the worms pop up, they just ride the worms versus getting their troops eaten. Anytime you need to drop troops off to land on the planet, you have to pay the Spacing Guild. So there's a lot of interactivity, and the economy is really, really, really well done and handled inside of the game. So what do you guys think about the first time we played Dune, and are you guys excited for the new deluxe version?
Dude, I'm a sucker for the deluxe version. I mean, honestly, at WobCon when we played this, I mean, it was an 8-hour game, the win maybe a little sour, but that's neither here nor there.
There was no win. There was no win. We all lost.
But man, it was such a good game. Kind of like you mentioned, the different factions, right? and especially these new Dune movies that are kind of fueling the passion for this theme, right? It makes sense for Gale 49, the publisher, to come out with this deluxe Kwisatz Haderach edition, right? It's if you're getting all these different guilds, you want to be Bene Gesserit or the Harkonnens or the Fremen or whoever, and be able to play their powers as they are shown in the books and the movies, and kind of feel like you're part of that. And now you get all these cool additional deluxe components. Oh, you best believe I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, dude. I love games where the players are like so vitally important to the game itself. Like every single player does something that's just like that you just think like that's broken, that can't work. And it's all self-balancing, right? Because it's like all the money in the game that gets paid for almost anything gets paid to a player. So if you have to pay money to put troops on the board, you pay it to the player who has the Spacing Guild. If you pay money to buy cards that come up every round, you pay it to the player who's playing the Emperor. So it's just like all these things. It's almost like this self-contained, like, all right, you 5 people are like running this economy and you guys are in charge of everything. There's nothing like, there's no like bank, there's no treasury, right? There's nothing that like gets taken out of the game. It's all self-contained and it's up to you guys to keep this thing going. So I can imagine in the premium edition having like, they're probably going to have like these metal coins that people are going to be rubbing in their hands.
It's going to be that premium spice.
Yeah,
baby.
that Emperor is going to be sitting over there with his giant pile just like playing in it like fucking Scrooge McDuck. Oh my God. It's definitely the kind of game that, if you're sitting there playing for 8 hours, having a deluxe edition could go a long way.
Yeah. But to keep things moving, to celebrate Ark Nova's number 3 overall ranking on BGG, they're excited to bring out a new official big box accessory expansion for Ark Nova. So you'll be able to plan and build a modern, scientifically managed zoo to support conservation projects now more beautifully and more organized than ever. How y'all feeling about the Ark Nova coming out with new organizer box, new expansion, all that good stuff?
So with this one, and I think Victor can probably speak more on the game because I know he plays that quite a bit. But for me, I did notice that like most of their expansions that they've been coming out with, like it's just like new maps, kind of. They do have like that aquatic one, I believe. But I don't know. To me, it almost feels like, is it really necessary? I think to me, it just feels like maybe Ark Nova's kind of just jumping into the whole, big box. Every big game that comes out, right? Like Terraforming Mars, like all these other big games. Everdell. They all will always end up defaulting to a big box at some point, right? And this just kind of feels like that. Me personally, I don't really feel very excited about it. I mean, the game itself is very good. I do really like the game. I'm actually really happy it's on BGA though, because I ended up, kind of selling my copy in order to, because I could just play it in BGA. But I mean, this one I'm not super excited about, just because I kind of getting tired of all these big box games. Like, the shelves are meant to hold board games, but these big boxes almost have to like stack on top of the shelves because they don't fit anywhere else. So it's just kind of like, I think that's a pass for me.
Oh yeah, because like I feel like with Dune, it was like a very old game that definitely needed like an update when they first updated it a couple years ago, because it was out of print, hard to find, from 1979. So they updated it. Right. And I think they updated it like pretty nice. It's like a pretty nice version that came out back then. But even back then, I think it's not like as nice as kind of like the fancy games we have now. And so, they're making a new premium edition that has like some new factions and stuff like that. But for Ark Nova, I think is a lot more recent than even that Dune reboot. It came out much more recently.
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
It did.
it looks very nice already. Like, I don't really have a lot of problems with it. It's not like, like crazy giant 3D printed things, but it's like very nice. It's already very big, a huge
Yeah.
table presence. Um,
Well, the
and
box itself, right? Like the base game, the box itself, it's pretty big in itself, I would say.
yeah, and then like we only recently got, like in my gaming group, the Waterworld expansion, or I'm not sure it's called Waterworld, but um, like we just recently got that, and I think that it's pretty new in general, or Aquatic Worlds. It hasn't even been out that long, so I'm just kind of curious if like very many people are like gonna splurge for the Arc Nova big box edition. Who are these people who don't have the game but want the big box edition? Because if you do have the game, it feels like a massive waste because it's already a huge game with like tons of components that looks very nice. Um, so yeah, this one's kind of weird. It doesn't even look like they're adding new content, just like more organizational. So
Hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, this one seems a little bit more like you said, just like, hey, there's this trend of big boxes.
Yeah.
Probably enough people will buy it to make a return on investment,
I'm
but yeah, it
yeah, I
Yeah,
pass.
mean,
baby. Just a big. I always call those like flex pieces,
Yeah.
where it's just like, yeah, it's a cornerstone of my library. Oh, do we want to play? It's like, oh, well, I have to like spend an hour setting it up. So, what do you guys want to actually
Yeah,
do?
I feel bad for my my friend who got the big box Castles of Burgundy edition,
mm,
and you know they were like, we were all like, ooh, he got it. He has these massive chunky pieces that are like,
yeah.
represent like the castles and all that, and it looks really nice. But it's like, man, this is so, like, we just look at that box when we're thinking about getting games out, and we're just like, dude, every single piece is like the size of your fists. I don't know if I want to pull all that out and set it up right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Plus, it's on
baby.
BGA. We can play the game, play the game in like 30 online minutes, turn based.
Yep.
And in our pockets with no setup time.
Well, there's
Yeah.
25,000 people following that campaign currently. So,
Apparently they have their audience. And speaking of having their audience, a game that I'm very much so looking forward to. It's actually an expansion to a game I already own. It's called Veiled Fate Tribunal. So Veiled Fate was a hit game from Studio 4 that's part social deduction, part strategy, and 100% part insanity. So in Veiled Fate, you pledge allegiance to one of nine mystery gods and need to help them ascend to supreme godlyhood by ensuring that they go on quests and receive their proper blessings. So, if you have 3 to 5 players, each player will have one secret god that they root for. But when you get to like the higher body counts of like 6 to 8 player games, players will secretly like have a team of gods that they're supporting. So if all 8 of us were playing, only 4 gods would be, chosen. But the kicker is you don't know who your teammate is. So me and Tona could be supporting the red god, Victor, and his girlfriend could be supporting the black god, but like none of us know who each are supporting. And like the game is played over 3 rounds where your actions revolve around like moving any of the 9 gods, because like you don't want to show your hand and say like, oh well, I want the red god to win, because there's actions that people can do to just like completely put the red god into oblivion and like make sure he never wins, because everybody has access to the same 9 gods. So a lot of the first time when we played this, everybody was kind of like like the strategy was don't pick who your first, like who your god is first. And so like if you were like paying attention, you could kind of suss out like, okay, so the person we're playing with, like this dude, he touched the white god, so he clearly isn't the white god, all that yada yada. But it was a great con game the first time we played. I played it about 3 times, and the game really picks up in round 3 when people just drop the mask and just like, yeah, I'm supporting Orange God. Like Orange God's got to go to the moon. He's got to catch up some points. Um, but now with the new expansion coming sometime in February, they're on the ships. They're heading to the ports now. They should hit. America and shipping distribution locations at the end of January. So hopefully to get my hands on it. There's a ton of different variants that they added to kind of like spice up some of the game, but like the lead headline of it is the Hadria expansion. So with Hadria, you add another god called Hadria, and Hadria is just like a big hater. So anybody that scores more points than Hadria automatically loses. So it's literally a race for second place. And so in the game, not only do you have to make sure your god is like doing well enough, but like you can't be doing too well, otherwise he's gonna get hit on Hadria's axe. So for those of you guys who played Veiled Fate, I think we all played at BGG Con 2 years ago. What do you guys think? You guys hype as your boy? Because I'm foaming at my mouth over this.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the luxuries of you getting it is that I'll probably get to play it at some point. Since we're so close by each other. So, I mean, I played the base game at BGG Con, kind of like you said, and I really liked it. It was really enjoyable. I like the fact that there's a lot of different moving parts on it. You're trying to control the gods and stuff, and it was just. It was a fun game, and I really like the table presence on it too. It's got a really cool design. So hey, you want to add more to it? Yeah, I'd definitely be down to play it.
Yeah, I had a really good time with it. I definitely liked. I think we had enough people where there was someone on your team, so I really liked figuring out who was on my team, what the other teams were, and like who I could fuck over. Like once you start to figure out, because I think some of the gods are like free agents, right? And like no one is actually like really rooting for them. So after a certain point, after you've kind of done your lying, you just start figuring out like, okay, why is Aaron keep messing with this god? I'm gonna just drop the hell out of him. And then that gives you like a nice little way of helping out your god indirectly without giving yourself away. It's just hurting other people, right? So Hadria sounds pretty interesting, where you could just be like even more tactical, where like rather than help out your god, you just kind of position Hadria wherever's best for you. So yeah, it sounds like it probably adds like a little bit of depth, a little bit of spice.
Oh, a lot of
I'll
spice,
have to try
because it's
that
one
out.
of those things where it's just like you can pump up like if I'm black, like I can pump up teal, and like everybody's just like, oh well, Aaron's pumping up teal, so we got to kill teal, and I'm just like, bruh, that's a-okay with me. But it's also just like somebody else might be trying to pump up teal, and like by indirectly them trying to like defend teal, they're like, I'm your teammate, and it's just like, my brother in Christ, no, you're not. I'm not your teammate. Like stuff like that is just, oh, it's so delicious. Like the social deduction games that have been produced in like the last 10, 15 years have just been hot fire, with Veiled Fate Tribunal coming in February, going to melt through that Tupperware, like through that plastic wrap to get on the table. So hopefully we will get that to the table as soon as I get it, and get it going from there.
Thank you for tuning in to our first WeAreBoard podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode and found a little inspiration for your next game night. If you want more board game content, and let's be honest, who doesn't? Check out our YouTube channel, WeAreBoard, where we dive into reviews, playthroughs, and sometimes a little bit more spicy things. You can also connect with us on Instagram at WeAreBoard for updates, behind the scenes, pictures, and all the board game eye candy that you can handle. Until next time, keep playing, keep exploring, and remember, every roll, deal, and move tells a story. Which one's yours?